Welcome back to the Dragonball Daima podcast on Nerdy Jock Media, where every week we're coming at you. We're watching the episodes week by week, and then we're coming right here and recording our thoughts immediately.
Right here.
This is the Nerdy Jock himself, Kevin Ketchum.
Hey, how's everyone doing this afternoon? We're glad to see you. I'm always here with my awesome co-host, DK. How are you doing?
I'm doing great because, you know, there's a precedent on the pod today. We have a sponsor.
Huge sponsor.
We have a sponsor. So, as you all know, Halloween's right around the corner, and what better way to usher in the spooky season than getting a custom carved pumpkin by a real professional. And this season you can get an awesome pumpkin like this, or the ones you see behind me right now, from Arthur Romeo. He's an anime voice actor, industry vet. He's been doing this for a long time, but he's also a pumpkin carver to the stars.
Fantastic artist, by the way. I mean, look at that work. That Piccolo doing his Masenko beam, it's just fantastic.
This is the Makanko Sapo, Kevin.
Makanko Sapo, sorry.
That's all right. That's why I'm here to always correct the Japanese names for the moves.
I know. I know I'm 50-50. I know most of them. But this is a beautiful piece of work.
And you know what? He turned this one around very quickly. Usually he's like a 6 to 8 hour. He does like very elaborate carvings like the one behind. This one he turned around like in a couple of hours really quick. I asked him if we could have one for the pod. So thank you very much, Arthur Romeo.
Thank you.
If you would like a custom carved pumpkin for this Halloween season, hit him up at Dreamboat82 on Instagram. That's at Dreamboat82 to get your pumpkin commissions. And hey, look, Thanksgiving and Christmas are right around the corner. And because we were all raised on Nightmare Before Christmas, Halloween and Christmas are practically the same thing now. So if you want custom carved pumpkins any time of year, hit him up at Dreamboat82 on Instagram. Thank you, Arthur, for sponsoring the pod. And thank you to all of our new subscribers.
Yeah, tons of new subscribers. Right now we're sitting at 4,300 about.
Yeah,
which is huge.
I mean, last week we were like, oh wow, we finally crossed the 1,000 sub threshold, and now we're at over 4,000.
So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're so excited to be doing this with you guys. I mean, we're loving the feedback on all the shorts we've been doing. We love the feedback on the episodes, and just the fact that you guys are tuning in to the first podcast. We think one of the first podcasts on YouTube that goes live after airing. We're just thankful that you guys are tuning in. We got a lot of cool information for you.
Yeah. So let's dive in. Episode 3. I forget the name of it already.
Yeah, I didn't think it had a name. I mean, it does, but we'll figure out the name later. But the name is not so much important in this episode, and I'll have it on the screen here in a second. But what's most important about this episode is that this is our first full-fledged actual introduction into the demon realm, right?
That's right. We're finally there. We're finally there. We got to see Warp Sama. This just giant like fish sort of Stargate-esque thing that gets you from the world into the demon world and stuff like that. And now we're less away from all of the world building of Dragon Ball into like the full new world building of the demon world itself.
And I mean, I do want to give, before we even get, because we got a lot of details to cover about the actual specific demon realm.
We actually took notes today.
We took notes today, but because there was a lot to take down. But I do want to just get your first initial impressions and what do you think about the episode? Did you love it, like it, hate it, mid?
Here's what I think about it.
Right.
This is an indirect answer to your question, but this is how it felt to me. This feels so much different than any other Dragon Ball story that has come before. There are similarities between this and the original Dragon Ball for sure, which we'll get into. But what this feels like to me was that Akira Toriyama and several of the members at Toei hired a dungeon master to write a epic like tabletop RPG that was like combining Dragon Ball with Star Wars. It's basically
totally Star Wars, right?
And
we're getting a lot of that.
Yeah, and then they just like played it. They explored the world the way that you would do. The dungeon master explained lore, and they just had a tape recorder or something going, and then they're like, let's turn that into the show. Because this feels not like Toriyama anime writing. This feels like Toriyama JRPG writing.
Right. No, exactly. That's a great comparison there.
Yeah, and I mean, and my initial impression of it is, yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's different. It's very, very different. I think the biggest thing that I like, which I mentioned, I think in episode 1, is I want an underpowered Goku to be facing this challenge, and they've given us that with the thick gas in the air in the demon world and how he's unable to move effectively. He's still not used to his body.
Right.
You know, he seems like he's weaker than Glorio solo right now.
Right. Yes, yeah, exactly. Glorio solo. It's funny that you mentioned him too, because just to add on top of that, I do love the fact that Goku is a little bit depowered. This does feel, when you said JRPG, it feels a lot like Dragon Quest.
Yes.
Right? It feels like a Dragon Quest, because in this episode, there's a lot of things that you're going to see, and a lot of, I don't want to say cliches, but a lot of you go to a new world, you go into a tavern, you get in a fight in the tavern. I mean, this happens in almost every anime, and even in Star Wars. I mean, there's a very similar scene to the Tatooine cantina scene.
There's random encounter fights.
Yeah.
There's like going and booking the inn.
Yeah.
There's going to like the hamburger place, which those burgers with the black bun are absolutely going to be like, if they're not already, a McDonald's or Moss Burger tie-in Japan.
I think I've seen the burgers before. Like if you haven't seen it yet, or you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch it. But there's a big purplish black bun that these burgers have, which I've seen at Burger King before. I think they've had promotions like that before.
Yeah, and Japan,
I didn't touch it. Didn't want to touch it.
Japan has done it a lot too, like with different things like black charcoal buns and all that stuff. So this is absolutely going to be a tie-in, no question.
But like you were mentioning a minute ago, the JRPG feel, it feels just like a Dragon Quest. They're setting up a really interesting storyline and getting us prepared for the events to follow. But I do want to say one thing real quick too before you dive deeper into the initial episode, is that my impressions were, if you're like, hey, what'd you feel overall? Was it like top tier? Was it okay, mid? Was it awesome, B plus? I don't know. I didn't necessarily love the episode for storytelling and even some of the animation. Some of the bad guys, the henchmen, didn't really do it for me. The art design on those, but overall, I would say for me it's more of a C plus on this.
A C plus. Okay, so if we're giving it a letter grade, that's fair.
Yeah.
It's not like, I mean, it was still, even though we're finally in the demon world, it was still mostly like, here's the world, here are the rules. Type of thing. We weren't really breaking new ground or whatever. Like it wasn't like top tier writing. But then again, for me, like I was just, the entire time I was in a little bit of a trance, just thinking about how this is such a JRPG.
Yeah.
Like I'm just watching one long cutscene of a JRPG, and it's like, oh, it's so interesting. Like this is a different feeling for Dragon Ball than we've had in a long time. Because even when we like super in many ways echoed things that we had seen before. There were tournaments. It's like, oh, we have to get Frieza now because Boo is asleep. Goku Black was an enemy, and then Zamasu was basically Kaioshin but evil. But this is just all sort of new stuff, and so for me, wasn't like the best written plot ever, but I'm kind of intrigued still.
I mean, I didn't hate it. It's right there in the middle. It's a passing grade for me. It's a C plus, and I'm intrigued too. But it's funny you say all these new things. The world, and we're gonna get, like I said, we're gonna get into that. But like right off the top, I just feel that it had some really great nostalgic moments, even though this is a brand new world. Like the character designs for the henchmen look like the Demon King Piccolo's henchmen from the original Dragon Ball that Goku fought when he was a child.
Right.
The huge guys with the tiny wings. I've seen that character design before. So that was what was exciting to me about this episode, is that it kind of triggered some really cool memories from back in the day when I saw Dragon Ball. So even though it's completely different, it does have those little things that kind of remind you of the good old days, the nostalgia days, back in my day on the Dragon Ball.
Like Piccolo's henchman, Tambourine, and all those guys. Yeah, the dudes who jumped them at the Mos Eisley Cantina.
Right, and the Mos Eisley Cantina. And even in, Dan, do you remember the city that they went to, all the designs of the houses and the hotels and the whole little city it looks like the Namekian spaceships in a way. And the Piccolo, their craft. So we are starting to see a meld of all these kind of worlds come together, but in a completely different way.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like Namek and Tatooine had a baby for sure.
I mean, just one quick tangent, right? This feels so much like Star Wars to me. I think there were some scenes heavily lifted from Star Wars in this one.
Yeah, like I said, it just it feels like a tabletop session.
Yeah.
If you've ever played like D&D or anything like that, it feels like, okay, the dungeon master made a world. He made a Han Solo-esque character.
Right.
Because D&D characters were all, sort of analogs for Lord of the Rings anyway. Initially, that's where it came from. It all came from Tolkien and stuff like that. So this feels like, instead of Tolkien, Star Wars is sort of the template, and they were playing this game. I mean, Glorio is absolutely a Han Solo-esque figure.
Glorio Solo.
Right, Glorio Solo. And speaking of the storytelling, I gotta say, I'm the interplay between him and Kaioshin, there's these little moments that really stuck out to me, like where Kaioshin is kind of softly sort of interrogating him and asking him, like, wait a second, because we get this world building thing where there are 3 demon worlds.
Okay, so we should just go ahead and get into that. Now, that was our general breakdown, but
we're really quick. I'll finish the thought really quick. So we have the 3 demon worlds.
Right.
The first one is ruled by Goma, who we already know, and that's the one that they need to get to stop, because that's where Dende is. And then but you can't enter that unless you're a palace member of the first one
or work for the palace.
Right. And then so they could only go through level 3, but then Glorio Solo also says, like, well, the only people who can go in and out of the demon world are people from worlds 1 and 2. And Kaioshin's like, well, wait a minute, how come you can go in and out of world 3? And he doesn't give a straight answer, but he says kind of like, well, I do some work in world 1. And then Kaioshin's like, oh yeah, well, what kind of work? He's like, this and that. So I like that. I like that interplay. I like the mystery, because it really is a case where you don't know if you can trust Glorio Solo yet. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy?
Scoundrel like Han? You never know.
I mean, what is it?
Scoundrel.
What is his motivation? Is there somebody worse than Goma that he's working for, or is he actually motivated by altruistic reasons? Who knows?
No. So, I have the feeling that he's going to be Han Solo-esque, where he's going to seem like a scoundrel, but he's going to come out and save him in the end. Or honestly, he might already be good. I don't know. But that's one of the cool things about this show, is that it is setting up a lot of really interesting mysteries, right?
Yeah, definitely.
In this episode, we're gonna go into a little bit detail about the demon world, because we've been waiting for them to show us the demon realm for about 40 years. 40 years. I mean, since back in the day, since Dragon Ball original. So number 1, first thing we find out is that this planet Batapi is the closest planet to a warp sama, which is that huge gray goldfish that they use to warp through to the demon realm, right? We find out that the demon ships, they work on magical energy, not like gasoline or fuel like other traditional ships, or like Namekian ships. So I guess that when we find out the Namekian ship, I assume that also operates on magical energy,
Right, yeah. I mean, which we've never been told, really. I mean, we know that Bulma was able to retrofit Piccolo's ship in order to get to Namek. But yeah, the fuel source was never discussed and stuff like that. Yeah, it's one of those things where answering that question seems to raise more questions. Right. Like, I don't really care how these ships work. It's like, it's like they work. So
I just thought it was an interesting point there. I also think it was cool that we have to have a PIN number, 8821 for this episode, and you have to have a PIN number to get into the realm. Now in the first episode when he left, I think they had to use another PIN number to get out, but it wasn't 8821. So maybe we'll find out more about that. Why is there a closed border? We do find out that once they go down and land on the planet, it has the sky, at least in the world 3, has a pinkish hue. The air is a lot thicker. The ecology is a lot different because of the thickness of the air, which is, by the way, created by floating volcanoes. So they're always erupting volcanoes, releasing this air, which I guess is equivalent to smoking 3 packs of cigarette every breath. So poor Goku's gonna have to get some new wish for some new lungs after this.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hopefully when they revert back to their adult age, it will undo the damage of all the secondhand smoke. But he seems to be having fun, because it's a sulfuric sort of smell. It doesn't smell that good, and he's like, oh, so I could just fart and nobody would notice.
No, so it smells funny. It's very much like being on a volcano planet. And now it is interesting to note that we were talking about the demon worlds. Is there more than 3 at this point? I don't know. just like in Dragon Ball Super, we didn't realize how many universes there were until they told us how many universes there are.
Right.
So there could always be more demon worlds, but we're just going to assume, take it at sight right now that there's 3 demon worlds, right? And I suppose that they work on a caste system, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're in the first demon realm, the upper echelon, then you are, royalty of highest wealth or highest standards. And we also find out a little interesting thing about Supreme Kai, right? You remember that?
I do not remember the thing about Kaioshin. Yeah,
So
go ahead.
we find out that Kaioshin is originally from the second demon realm, because Glorio and him have a conversation. And not only did we find out that he was from the second demon realm, which is essentially like upper middle class to middle class, right?
Right.
And then the world they're in now in the third demon realm is actually like just the scoundrels, the shenanigans, or just the general.
It's
the
more
peasants of
lawless.
More lawless.
Yeah, like a lot more scarcity, a lot more, I guess, quote unquote, dangerous.
Yeah. And we're also finding out in the demon realm that there are different types of demons. And Supreme Kai, his type of demon is called a Glind, a Glind.
Yeah.
So that was a brand new, shocking experience for me to find out that we kind of knew that there were different kinds of demons, but we just didn't know like if they were types, if it's just a character design, or if there's actual motivation behind it. But to see them have a name for his type of demon, the Glind, is a cool new addition to the story.
Right, and that was one of the other things. I mean, again, like I'm just gonna keep harping on it, but it's like all of this stuff just feels very like RPG-ish, Or it's like, oh yeah, this race, the Glens, and this race, to that, or whatever. And I wonder if Namekians have a different term in the demon world, but I guess not, because Goma called Neva a Namekian. So maybe they named planet Namek after what their demon name was or whatever. But I don't know. But yeah,
Never
just
the Namek, what?
yeah, a lot more world building. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, adding all these races.
Yeah, and it's just cool to see it all kind of coming together. I mean, it was definitely another heavy lifting. Let's break down the world. But I think the next few episodes, it is going to go a little bit deeper. I mean, we have another mystery that was unfolding in the middle episode, right? So you have these horizontal 3 demon world warps that you have to go through in Warp Sama to get there.
Right.
But they used to have, evidently, a vertical realm through the ground, right?
Right.
Which is now blocked off by a light barrier. So we got to find out who created this light barrier, who's trying to separate the first demon realm from the second demon realm from the third demon realm, and why is it vertical when it's horizontal another way? I mean, these could all just be arbitrary things they created when they did the designs, but maybe there's more to the world building than we thought as far as the depth and breadth of the demon realm.
Well, we do have a ticking clock too, because Kaioshin was unable to tell Kibito what the pin number was before they went into Warp Sama. So now we have this thing where Bulma is back on Earth fixing up the ship in order to go into Warp Sama essentially and go, but they don't have the pin number, so who knows what kind of shenanigans that's going to cause.
I know, because all we do know is that Kibito does know where that planet Batapi is the closest planet to get to the demon realm, but he just doesn't know the pin number to get in. So I'm wondering if I'm hoping, Piccolo and Vegeta or someone, if they have an argument with Warp Sama and have a fight there. Because that was kind of fun, a little moment of levity here. And it was also reminiscent of when Goku was a child. Remember, he would open his mouth, he would say stupid stuff, he would talk without thinking, pat, pat, pat. All kinds of stuff. Yeah,
he's kind of right back there to like dumbass Goku again.
He's kind of.
I mean, which again, it works when he's a kid. Yeah. And it's we were also talking too, just on a technical level, how impressive it is that Masako Nozawa can still kind of get up to his kid voice. It's not quite there like it used to be. Like it's a little raspy. You're hearing the fatigue a little bit, but it's not bad. Like the performance as Kid Goku's pretty good.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty great. I'd say her vocals. I mean, if they're 100% back in the day, they've got to be around 80 to 85%. I think they're still fantastic. We were just impressed today because we had some initial gripes on episode 1. If you guys remember watching episode 1, that we thought, hey, we can tell we can tell a difference in the voice, you know?
Right. And speaking of voice actors too, at the beginning of the episode, I was like, man, like Glorio Solo sounds so familiar. Who the hell is he?
Who is this guy?
I looked him up, Shigaraki from My Hero Academia. And one of our favorites, Inumaki from Jujutsu Kaisen, the guy who only speaks in rice ball ingredients. So.
Salmon roll.
Yeah. Great voice. Doing a great voice here too. Like it's youthful, but also kind of like edgy, you know. It's a good performance.
And it's funny that we had to look at it. We Googled it to find out the voice actor. And obviously this is a Japanese version. I know now, I think they're about to release in the next couple of weeks the first English dub translation.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. That's I think November 9th, 10th, and 11th in theaters, by the way. It's a Fathom Events. They're going to show the first 3 episodes. So what you saw today and the last 2 are going to be an hour and a half, like premiere kind of thing, or 90 minutes at the theater events around the U.S. So just look up Dragonball Daima in U.S. theaters, and it's coming up in the next couple of weeks here.
I'm going to have to watch it in English, too, so that Kian knows what's going on.
Yeah, but my initial point there, DK, was that it's so funny because Inumaki and JJK is where I remember him from in Japanese. Like it was like the most reminiscent. JJK is one of the last shows we finished watching.
Right.
And I was like, who the hell is this? DK's like, this is someone we know. And it was Inumaki who barely speaks, you know? But we're like, oh, it's totally Inumaki. We could tell, but I love that guy.
Famously, you made the point on that podcast that Inumaki, despite not being able to speak, had a more defined character than a lot of the people that we were getting full episodes of. This was in season 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen. There were, full episodes devoted to characterization of the Kyoto school people that were fighting the Tokyo school people. And we were talking about, sort of where it worked, where it didn't. And then you pointed out correctly too, and I agreed with it, that Inumaki, even though he can't speak, seems like a more defined character than even at the time Nobara did. You
definitely knew who he was by episode 14 or 15. And then you didn't really get Nobara till basically the last episode of season 1.
Right.
But this is a whole different pod.
It's a whole different pod, yeah.
But if you haven't seen the JJK pod, we have about, 10 or 12 episodes on our YouTube channel right now. So if you haven't liked and subscribed as well, make sure to click that button. Check out our back catalog of JJK, Dragon Ball Z pods as well. And we did a couple Dragon Ball Z movies too. So we're not ending the episode. I just want to do a quick plug.
Yeah. If you're on the fence about JJK, that was one of the reasons we covered it. We're a couple of old takus covering new anime in that respect, and I mean, it was our first time watching it. Season 1, we had mixed feelings about. I think we had peaks and valleys for sure.
Yeah,
parts of it that we liked more than other parts. And then eventually we're going to probably cover season 2 to some degree.
Yeah,
so.
And I mean, we thought it was pretty damn funny how we approached JJK Pod, was that we didn't watch ahead. Most people had already seen season 2, and even who are in love with it caught up on the manga.
I think while we were recording it, the manga ended too. Yeah. So
we were just like, hey, we're not gonna watch ahead. We're not gonna look online. We're not gonna Google anything. We're just gonna try to go fresh in every episode and give our hot takes. But obviously, you guys, the fandom out there, you guys know a hell of a lot more than we did at JJK. So maybe it wasn't worth your time, but it's worth a laugh for sure. Check it out because we have some crazy theories in there too.
And I think we said before too, when we cover season 2, we're gonna have a JJK expert in the chair with us talking about stuff. And so if we have questions or confusions, or we just need a counterpoint to us, because we are very much like old men trying to program a piece of technology that we don't understand
exactly
in the way that we approached it. But he's got a buddy, he's gonna come on and we're gonna figure this out.
I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe Dragon Ball Daima itself had a little motivation from JJK, and the fact that you've mentioned 4 times on this pod already that it's reminiscent of a JRPG, which JJK is absolutely straight up Dungeons and Dragons and ripped off of like Japanese role-playing games.
Right. I mean, there isn't really much more to talk about with this episode. I mean, it was pretty just like, here's the demon world. Yeah. Here's the inn. Here's the tavern. It ends on a cliffhanger. We should have put a spoiler warning. We should put that up on the screen.
Well, I mean, there's a couple more questions we do have to get to though, because we need to know how many different demon kings are there? Does each realm have its own king? Because we know Glorio at the end of this episode mentioned trying to connect with King Kadan.
Right.
So who is this guy? I'm sure we're going to find out probably in the next episode. They're setting us up there. I mean, but they just had a lot of interesting things. I mean, they had so many Star Wars homages in that episode. They had the, Glorio, he flashed his gun, just literally did this to the innkeeper who was trying to overcharge him for a room.
Right.
And he just did the whole, check this out, my piece, and dropped the prices, which is exactly what Han Solo did.
Right.
Sitting in the cantina. So it was cool from a nostalgia standpoint, especially people who grow up who love Star Wars. I'm not a mega fan, but I've seen them all multiple times.
Right.
I am a fan. But it's just cool to see some comparisons there and see that at least Akira got to put, his imprint on Dragon Ball in a different way than he's ever done before.
Right, yeah. And covering this show, too, it's been very interesting how divided the fan base is on this.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't want to give this show a chance because there are plot things that are very, very similar, if not just straight up ripped off from GT, which puts a bad feeling in people's mouth. But also, too, people really want, like you said, to see super animated through Granola, the whatever other arcs, Moro, all that stuff, Granola, just everything
superhero arc, yeah.
And I gotta say too, to address that, I was right there also. When I found out that it was going to be another GT-esque story, I was not into it at first either. Like I was very resistant to come on, can we just go further than this? Can we do more of Super but just better animated? And we've gotten a lot of comments and feedback from you guys. Some of it has been, that criticism, which is fair. I would still say give the show a chance. It's beautifully animated. It's interesting so far. We haven't gotten into the meat of it yet, so we'll see kind of where it's going. But I wanted to address one criticism in particular, which I found interesting, which was the character designs.
Right.
I think a couple people said, I don't like the character designs, that they look too, blocky, or they look too this or that.
Right.
So the character designs in this show, I always pronounce everybody's name wrong on this pod, because once the cameras are rolling, the lights in my face, it's I can't remember any Japanese things. But I believe they're done by a gentleman named Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru, and he was chosen by Toriyama because his style was so similar that Toriyama couldn't even tell their pictures apart.
Oh, wow.
Apparently. And this is the style, like it or leave it, that was Toriyama's style at the end of his life.
Yeah.
These character designs, if you have the reissues of the Dragon Ball manga where Toriyama drew the new cover pages and stuff like that, they're done in this style. Mm-hmm. This sort of blocky, JRPG style, frankly, and stuff like that. And for that, it seems really cool to me. If you're, really into the animation side of things, if to you, the animators and the designers and the people behind it are also characters in a thing, which I can't help but think as a filmmaker myself, I definitely think the personalities who animate and design stuff are part of the experience. And I do think it's cool that they got that guy to do the designs in that Toriyama style that, so actually this is the closest we've come to seeing Toriyama animated.
That's an amazing point. Thanks for that, DK. Then that actually poses another question for me. Do you think what we saw in today's episode 3 of Dragon Ball Daima, that the aesthetic from this point on is going to have that blockier kind of not GT-esque, the blockier kind of original Toriyama design, as opposed to episode 1 of Daima, where they had actually were doing more flashbacks and callbacks. So they actually tried to copy different styles in Z, to show the Buu saga and all those big moments in Cell and all those other moments that were, they were doing the video feedback play. So maybe they're intentionally having different designs there. And do you think that those designs are going to come back, or they're going to when they do bigger action sequences, or do you think we're probably going to stay from a character perspective and design in where we are now in episode 3? Because it is different.
I think everything in the present is going to be that Nakatsuru Toriyama style.
Yeah.
And because the boarding and the things that were done for the past stuff, which is now in the intro, you see that Dragon Ball thing with the Maeda designs, and the guy who did the superhero intro too, that guy very much wanted to do it in the original styles. Because it doesn't look as cool when it's updated, the old stuff. When you see older Dragon Ball animated in a modern way, it kind of feels weird. But that guy's a super Dragon Ball nerd. He wants it done in the original style, which is why Buu Saga looked like Buu Saga in the flashbacks, except insane, with insane motion animation we've never seen.
So sick.
And why those Maeda designs are there as well. So I think that if we have flashbacks, I think that this show, just in general, the staff and everybody that they picked are just really into Dragon Ball. They want Buu to look like they want Boo Saga to look like Boo Saga. They
Right.
want Piccolo Saga to look like Piccolo Saga and stuff like that. But yeah, to answer your question, I think that everything contemporaneously is going to be in that the style that Toriyama had at the very end of his life.
Okay. So, I mean, and so if you think of it that way, it just actually does show how much respect all these character designers and animators and everyone who's working the show really do have for Dragon Ball in general, from the original to Z, to Super, and now to Daima. You know, you can really see that everyone is putting a lot of care into that. So if you're at home and you're thinking, oh, I don't like the designs, like I said I didn't really particularly like the henchman fight scene in the cantina today, because it did seem a little like, okay, simple and blocky. But you know, maybe I just need to open my heart and mind a little bit more and you know, appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, the main thing I didn't like about that fight, the fight was fine. It was well animated for sure. But what I didn't like about it was an example of tell don't show.
Right.
Like Goku is telling us, oh, I'm not used to this body. The air is too thick. I can't move. Yet it didn't really hinder him in his ability to fight at all.
Except for the arrows. Like, he kind of dodged them, but the arrows were hilarious. How slow the arrows were. It was like, okay.
Right. We have yet to see him like actually struggle though.
Right.
Like really, really struggle, which I'm sure they'll do once we get to stronger villains. But that's what I want to see. I want to see Goku have to work. You know, I want to see him like actually be like, oh, like, can he defeat this villain? Because, you know, he's in a different body and because the atmosphere is different, he's not used to it. That's what I want to see ultimately. Yeah. And hopefully as we go, we'll see more of that.
Yeah. Well, and I got a couple more comments or one more thing in particular. Now, we were mentioning about the people who are commenting on YouTube. Thank you so much. We appreciate all of them. We read and respond to as many as we can on there.
Right.
And these are great conversations you guys are having. Now, when you mentioned that some people are saying, hey, I'm out on Daima, I don't really think this is my vibe, I'd rather just see Super. Here's what I recommend doing. We also have another pod we're doing right now, the What We're Watching pod for fall. We're talking about Ranma 1/2. We were both big fans of the original, and we're watching the remake. And so when you're talking about how people don't want to watch Daima, but might be swayed into it, I say go back and watch the original Dragon Ball concurrently with Daima. You know, and that way, when you finally do get to the Piccolo saga, you're going to see a lot of similarities, a lot of things that are very nostalgic and kind of bring back those great memories you had from that saga. That was one of my favorite arcs, was the Demon Piccolo arc.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's never really a bad excuse to rewatch Dragon Ball in my mind. Like the original, it's a fun adventure. It was that, you know, sort of, you know, convergence point where a growth story like sports manga combined with a shonen story, like the second Goku and Krillin end up at Master Roshi's, the story just really takes off.
Starting from their milk training, they're running with the milk cartons on their head and finding the stone.
Right. And Kevin and I diverge on this too. We actually both commented on a comment on Ranma where somebody was like, I've never seen Ranma. I've never seen this. What do you think I should do? Kevin's like, oh, go back and watch the original. But me, I'm like, nah, just watch the new one. Okay. Like see it. And then go back and watch the original, just because you're going to get a much faster paced thing with this. You're going to get beautiful animation, and then you can go back and watch all the filler, which has amazing bits. Ranma has like the best filler of any anime ever. Like it's mostly filler, but it's all hilarious. Yeah. So it's great.
But that is another pod. So stay tuned and watch that and check it out on our feed. It's on our videos feed on YouTube.
Right.
As well.
Well,
anything last comments? Anything else you need to add?
Let me see. I think I wrote down like 4 things. I think I covered them all. Yeah. Burger Titan. Oh yeah. So one of my favorite pieces of animation this episode, last point, was there was a reference to Dead Zone and World's Strongest. These famous sequences of animation in Dead Zone where Goku does a bunch of back handsprings with his Nyoibo on his back and then lands in a certain stance. And then that shot was repeated in World's Strongest, but he slipped on the ice and fell on his face and stuff like that. And they had that shot in this show.
Oh yes.
Updated. It looked gorgeous. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Well, since you brought that up, I mean, not to extend this any longer, but we do have some serious questions here about, you know, the film Dead Zone, because that's actually our strongest connection from the Dragon Ball Z time to Daima, was that time that Gohan and then went to the Dead Zone. In the demon realm. It kind
of looks like the demon realm,
right?
But I guess because the movies aren't canon, you know, like they don't fit anywhere. I mean, people try to say that they fit. somewhere. The only one that might
Right.
fit somewhere is Broly might fit in the 1 week period when they were waiting to fight Cell.
Right.
It's like,
Okay.
except for that Goku and Gohan canonically were supposed to stay in Super Saiyan the whole time and they don't in that movie. But yeah, like I don't, Garlic Jr., pointy ears, all that stuff, like all of his henchmen,
They're
pointy ears.
Demon Realm.
If it was canon, it would be Demon Realm, but it's not. One piece of world building that was super weird.
Right.
But this is my final point. It was super weird. Was Goku was in the ship. He was in Glorio Solo's ship, and he started stroking Nuevo, and then it grew.
I know, that was kind of awkward.
Like, whoa.
I was like, whoa.
That's a weird. I mean, there's no way that doesn't mean what I think it means.
Yeah, that was, and it seemed pretty overt too. So
Yeah.
someone snuck that in there. Some Disney '90s stuff going on there.
For sure.
Anyway,
that was Dragon Ball
yeah,
Daima
that was-
episode 3, Nerdy Jock podcast. Thank you so much for joining us week to week. Come back next week. We'll be right here again covering episode 4.
Actually, hold on though. It might be a little bit later than on a Friday though. It might be the next Saturday or Sunday because I am moving November 1st that Friday. So I'm actually moving to a new apartment where me and my girlfriend were super excited, but I don't think I'll be able to shoot on Friday. So we'll see. But
We'll figure it out.
either way, we're going to have a new episode up next week for Dragon Ball Daima episode 4.
And we'll see you then. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you,
and
guys.
at Dreamboat82 on Instagram if you want a custom pumpkin.
Great work. Okay. Yeah.
Boom.